if you want to achieve your 100 millions, what do you need to see happening with your new customers, with your existing customers? What are their behaviors right now? What do you need to change? I believe growing your brand equity for the long run, and specifically when you work for a heritage brand, is so crucial. And I think it equals your profitability as well. So growing your top line in performance marketing, everyone knows how to do that. Creating a long-term profitable business is a very different thing.
Welcome back to Chew on This. Today we have Sabrina, who is SVP of Brand and Digital at the iconic lingerie brand Hanky Panky. First of all, Sabrina, thank you so much for coming all the way here to Jersey, which is typically a treacherous climb for many people, and making the trip to come and share all the knowledge you've had in your years and decades of experience. And so we're so excited to kind of break apart all of the different experiences you've had along your years. But before that, the few people who don't know you, maybe you can give a little bit of your background and leading up to how you even also got to Hanky Panky.
Sounds good. First, thank you both for having me. It's a pleasure to be in Jersey and leave the city for a bit. Well, I just came back from Paris, so it's been a trip. So I am the SVP of Brand and Digital at Hanky Panky, as you said. I oversee creative, brand marketing, digital, e-com, and everything DTC there. But as you said, decades, which makes me feel very old, of experience. I worked for 10 years in global advertising agencies based in Europe, worked for Havas, Leo Burnett, Publicis, the big ones. I think that's part of my experience, really strong experience in branding and connecting emotionally with customers. And then moved to San Francisco because it has been a dream of my husband and I. He lived in 14 countries. I lived in 5. So it was part of our DNA. And we heard always, everything is possible there. And sometimes in France, it's not. That was quite a trip. We moved 10 years ago, and I joined the new leadership of Sears and Kmart apparel without knowing the brands. And it was a new leadership. We had 2 years to turn around their apparel business. And you'll see it makes a lot of sense with the discussion we'll have. I was also able to leverage the biggest database that exists in the US with more than 100 million customers in their database. So talking about, leveraging data to inform your strategies. It was an amazing experience for me. We did turn around this business, but it was only apparel. And based on this experience, continuing into, big corporations in the US, I joined Ascena. Ascena was the group who owned Loft and Taylor and Lingerie, where I was VP of marketing and customer strategy there, with one mission: bring customer-centricity to the organization. I loved it. And then, COVID hit, all these thousands of stores closed. And I really made an assessment, what do I want now? What makes sense for me? And Hanky Panky made sense. Not on paper initially, but for, I would say, 2 reasons, and we'll talk about it. I love working for heritage brands that have something to say, that build something that means something to customers and stick to it. That's, gold for anyone in marketing. And they had the gem of a product. They still have it. But I really felt that my experience could bring, something special to them. And 2, I think, when you work in marketing, e-com, DTC, you see just one piece of the puzzle. Granted, it's a big one. But I was at that stage where I felt like I needed to understand the full company's ecosystem, full P&L, all of the, pieces of the puzzle that I can, leverage and guide in some ways to build a stronger marketing and DTC businesses.
That's amazing. Well, first of all, thank you for that background. I think it's, I always envy people who have had years of experience and then get to kind of play around in the times today, because it's like you have so many probably core fundamental learnings that you're probably seeing that a lot of brands are just kind of avoiding or ignoring. And so I'm really curious, when you look at your time that even like Sears, moving on to Loft, and now Hanky Panky, what is something that's been core to you in the marketing realm that you felt like the first thing you did on day one, or, the first year on the job, what was that core thing that you focused on whether it came to customers or the brand or the performance side? What are some of those core things that have not changed over these last 2 decades?
Well, that's a great question. I would say, just looking back, it has always been about the customers, the end customer, not just the way they purchase, the way they live with your product and their lifestyle and what's going on during, in their life. So when you work in advertising agencies and like rewarded in these big advertising agencies at this time, so we're talking about 15 years ago, you wanted to create the best TV commercial or the best out-of-home campaign. And it was always about finding this universal truth or this key insight, that could really connect emotionally with the customer that you had in front of you. So I've been passionate about that. What I was missing, and that's part of the cultural difference between the two continents, it was really about the emotional connection. Then I went to the US and I focused, in a big way on understanding, how to leverage data, how to understand their behavior, really getting to ask the right questions about the customers to find what was actionable for the brand. And I think the magic happens when you combine both.
Yep.
And it was on purpose that I did this, because I felt at some point that I was missing one or the other. Now having both and having the ability to be an expert in both fields, I can bring the best, I think, to the table and really oversee a business and bring it to a different step. And then you have a lot of challenges on the way, but customer at the core and being passionate about understanding them.
That's awesome.
I feel like we've gone through so much in maybe like the last 5 years of just our brand. Like every year there's some challenge, right? And I'm sure if you look back over 20, 25 years of, the experience that you've had, how do you navigate these challenges, right? I'm sure over the time things change drastically, or, maybe even just the smallest amounts, but how do you as an operator kind of just get through everything?
So I'll start with challenges. I think the one that I always faced was, a siloed organization. Always. I think I don't know any brand, mid-size, billion-dollar brand that are not experiencing silos or personal agendas, in the mix. When you want to be customer-centric, you need to make sure that your organization, your structure, your objectives are based on customers first, and not just, any personal agenda or KPIs that anyone is looking at. So that was, to me, like a recurring challenge that I had, and showing how, breaking silos step by step, you cannot change everything overnight, specifically when you work for an organization with 60,000 employees who have their, routine and processes, but building your ability to influence things at the highest level, but also at the lowest level, makes a big difference. So I had to build, a lot of influential power during the time. And I would say personal challenges also, just being able to make an impact in big corporation when, everything takes time, everything takes buy-in. You want to, do something that is relevant today to a trend. But then you're told, maybe in a year and a half, because we have a roadmap of other things, right? So I would say these are the two biggest challenges. What I'm living now, and that's why I joined Hanky Panky, is the ability to own the full team. So break the silos and really redefine what a CMDO could be. And two, being so fast and agile with the team, scrappy sometimes. I don't have 30, data analytics people that I had before, but going fast, being reactive, being proactive makes, a huge difference. Not at the same scale, but at the scale of the company, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's so many trends that have come and gone, especially when it comes to even just channels, right? I think the thing that kind of remains the same is the marketing elements of, connecting with your consumer, but the things that have changed is pretty much the distribution, right? So for example, TikTok and like the rise of TikTok Shop, like I'm still figuring it out. It's not my bread and butter. I guess as a leader, how are you keeping your ear close to the ground on what's trending, but then also deciding, well, do you learn more about it? Do you become the person that does it, or do you hire for something like that? I think I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, it's two big questions. The first is how do you stay ahead and identify these trends? It goes just beyond marketing, I think. Like we're talking about trends to design products, or where do we invest, etc. The tools that we have, take the fashion industry. It's led by trendsetters and shows and organizations that give you trends 15 months in advance, right? But that's now just one part of what's going on. The other part is coming from customers and content creators. And I think everyone is trying to catch up. What I want from my team is to be able to identify both what will be relevant and what is coming and what will be relevant for us. So that's really something that I'm working on, is how do we build that? And then from a channel perspective, I want to be the first. This company has been the first to develop products that were game changers for women. So it's part of the DNA of the company to be quite bold. The founders are still around. They're in their 70s. And they are the first saying like, okay, go for it. Try it. But I always, let's talk about TikTok Shop. I'm working on it right now. So we know what it could be, or at least we have our assumption. And then you will have like maybe 3 steps. How do we just crawl with the existing team and maybe a few partners? You make your use case, you see the potential, and then you might hire experts, at some point. So I had also consultants coming, for 6 months to help me set up. And then you invest in your resources, in your team, and you bring it in-house. So I'm doing it for TikTok Shop for now, but I've done it for e-com. I've done it for our personalization journey, loyalty, etc. I'm lucky enough to have a lot of experts around me that I can bring in, but I wouldn't build a team from scratch without having any data to show the potential of it.
Love that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really like that approach. You mentioned, breaking silos in organizations. And I think one of the largest silos within marketing is this kind of brand versus performance, right? And I know internally, even in our own brand, right? You have Ash, who is our CMO, and then Ankit, who is our chief brand officer. They literally sit on opposite sides of the room. But
different budgets.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, obviously always different perspectives. And then there is like a lot of like, okay, I'm not going to step in this zone and you're not going to step in this zone. But then there are certain things where it's like, no, I want it to be this versus no, I want it to be this. So I'm curious, as you're trying to break silos, how are you managing choosing, right? Things like brand versus the age old brand versus performance, because you said like, the goal to focus on, don't just focus on KPIs, but what if the KPI is to hit $100 million in revenue this year? And the only way you can do that is to focus on performance, right? Then technically you're not really breaking a silo, you're empowering a silo. So curious on your thoughts, because I'm sure you have so many perspectives and so many experiences at this. So if you can touch on a few.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I would say, you have no choice right now in balancing both. You cannot run a performing e-com business if you don't have the right, brand narrative or experience into it or understand your customers. Well, you cannot do great brand marketing if you're not, supported by the digital, media budget. So I don't believe in, a world where everything is separated. And you talked about brand versus marketing, but let's put e-com and then stores and then wholesale, like silos are everywhere. So breaking them means, giving objectives to a team that are exactly the same. I call it also CPIs, and like we have customer performance metrics that we're looking at. If you want to achieve your 100 millions, what do you need to see happening with your new customers, with your existing customers? What are their behaviors right now? What do you need to change? This is not something that just performance versus brand can do. So we have the same objective. That's one example. 2, I believe growing your brand equity for the long run, and specifically when you work for a heritage brand, is so crucial. And I think it equals your profitability as well. So growing your top line in performance marketing we know how to do that, right? Like you put some promos out there, get some short-term, ROAS. Everyone knows how to do that. Creating a long-term profitable business is a very different thing. So depending on where you work, I work for a company that has been around for 46 years and has been strong for 46 years. I need to look at my full P&L and make sure that I'm driving profitable growth. The only way to do it is to have, a strong brand and a strong performance team, right? So it's not one or the other ever. And protecting your brand marketing budget, I will always be an advocate, maybe because I come from branding initially, makes a big difference. This year, just to give you an idea, our full price business is up 19% versus promo being down the same amount, right? Why am I seeing a full price business that is blooming right now while everyone is price sensitive? It's because we built that. We built a strong brand, and it takes, your brand expression, your brand perception, your design, the narratives that you put on your e-com, on your PDPs, etc. Just the full experience has to be on par with your brand, your ethos, and what you stand for. And working for a heritage brand, you have so many stories to tell on how the product is made, on the ethical aspect of it, on the transparency, on the trends that we follow, et cetera, et cetera. It's not just about pushing, products down our customers' throats. I would say there's something else that is interesting. We're talking about lingerie here, so it's different from, Obvi or any other brand. It's highly emotional. When you pick your underwear in the morning, and for men also maybe, but for women, it's based on how you want to feel during a day. Yep. It's not based on, I will see someone that every day and I want to show off. No, it's about how you want to feel. So there are many aspects that are very emotional that performance cannot capture. But performance and brand together can capture amazing things. That's a great point. Without talking about UGC and how UGC can perform and all of these other things.
Well said. Really well said.
Well, at what point in the life cycle do you think brand really starts to matter, right? And I ask this question because when we, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners and viewers are probably just starting their journey in the beginning, or they're kind of, a couple of years in. When we first started, sure, Ankit designed the label, the branding, the logo, everything. But at that point, it's like, we got to do what we got to do to make sales, right? And it really falls on performance. So I'm curious your thoughts on when do you really focus on brand? When should brand owners really be like, you know what, now I gotta solidify the brand image?
I would have a very classic answer, top of the funnel, capture, anyone's attention, make sure that, you capture them, at the right time of their lives, of their day, etc., with the right message to bring them through your funnel. But if I might, disagree with what you said, brand marketing can also lead to performance. One example is, for example, Valentine's Day was not a big event for Hanky Panky. Because in the past it was not. I have no explanation about that, but I was hoping to see just a nice, increase in sales. What we've done it from a brand marketing perspective first. So let's bring an activation to New York, something creative, innovative. We created a pop-up on Union Square in the midst of winter in New York with this concept, because we're born and designed in New York, of love from New York, and having New Yorkers express the different types of love that they're experiencing. We had partners, we had a gift, etc. It was a some Gen Z will call that a glimmer in in this kind of sad time in New York. When you combine it with influencers, activation, PR, etc., that drove a ton of traffic and qualified traffic to our website. What we're very good at is converting. We have a conversion rate that is way higher than the industry standard. When you have that, brand marketing can drive the traffic that you need. Of course, you combine it with an amazing, performance marketing, campaign, and then you get the biggest days of the year for the brand after 2 years.
Makes sense.
Chew on This is sponsored by, if you're juggling your marketing ops between different platforms, then listen up. Ash and I were in the same boat as you were not too long ago. We were using an email service provider and an external SMS provider to manage over 200,000 customers. With numerous email flows like post-purchase, abandoned cart, win-back automation funnels, running these communications on several platforms was killing our potential impact because we just didn't know how to optimize the process on each channel. We needed a new approach, so we reached out to our community. The number one recommendation was SendLane, so we had to check it out. And let me tell you, it's surprised us on every level. They took over the entire migration process, transferring data, forming up emails, and making sure that we didn't miss a beat. And now with their Move Now, Pay Later offer, it's easier than ever. You pay nothing up front, no hidden fees, and no unexpected bills. So if you're worried about the cost, the disruptions, or the sheer amount of work it's going to take to migrate your current marketing ops, SendLane takes care of everything and you don't pay until they're done. We highly recommend SendLane, and since we've moved, we've seen incredible ways to optimize all our channel strategies in one place. Now, let's get back to the episode. We're talking about, performance and brand. I'm curious, obviously you've lived through the era of when, pre social media marketing, then came the days of like Instagram and the feed being super helpful and what came first, and then you started seeing glimpses of Facebook, right? And now you got to see post iOS, right? So you had the golden nugget days, and now it's like, oh wow, there's struggle. I think we live in a world where now it's like, you have brand, and then you have paid marketing, and then you have like organic, right? I'm curious on your take on like organic. How are you guys approaching that at Hanky Panky? Because I know it's become a big priority here with Ash too, on the marketing end. So how are you guys positioning that?
I would talk more about the future of it because I think we have so much work to do there. First, what we have is a strong community. We have a very loyal customer. Our product, when you try it, you stay with it. And I'm not just saying that because, I work there. That's the magic of this brand. We have the best product out there, lace product. We've been leaders for so long. So we can stand by this product, and it created a community of women who really want to, advocate for it. So I have this community. Did we do a good enough job at growing it and turning it into advocates, turning it into, anything performing from a business perspective? Not yet. And I think it's different for each brand. It's like, at least that's how we're taking it. What are the 3 brand pillars that you want to build on organic, whatever is the channel, and then you translate it to the channel and your tactics. But what are the 3 things that you want to focus on to create your narrative and your content on top of just pushing products, right? It's not about products. And one of the thing that we uncovered is tapping into life moments. Understanding that, a customer can change at a specific time in their lives, right? So let's take a bridal. We have a bridal business. You speak about, organic, and I will put some paid onto it also. Before you buy your bridal lingerie for your wedding, for your honeymoon, etc., the bride starts 6 months, 9 months, a year before. And this time there, you can put as many ads as you want. You will drive traffic to your website, and then your head of e-com will come and say, hey, it's not converting. You're fucking my conversion rate. That's what happened. But no, it was intentional. Is how do you use organic to be there, with your customers and prospects before they hit the moment when they want to purchase. So we've done that for 6 months. You get into April and May, you put your performance marketing behind it, you boost it on Pinterest and other social media platform, and then you grow by triple digit your business in bridal. But it's understanding the customer again. So that's one thing. It's like lifetime understanding what they're going through and being relevant to them. 2 is really your brand pillars. What do you stand for? I'm lucky enough to work for a company that stands for women and advocate for women, their freedom, what they want to look like, what they are going through, etc. We want to stand by them, and whatever happens, we can take a stand on things and have a discussion with them. And that's something that we're really exploring right now. And I think the other one is a little bit more, I wouldn't say opportunistic, but there's a huge trend around vintage, archives, nostalgia, etc. We're a brand with such a heritage that just going back to the past and working with other brands and doing partnerships and collabs, working with content creators around, what nostalgia means to them and to the brand is also something very cool to explore. So it depends on every brand. I think for organic, it's always, go back to the roots of your brand, what you want to accomplish, and create a community and a two-way discussion.
Yep. Oh, that's awesome.
On that trend of organic, right? How much do you guys focus on, say, like influencer and affiliate, and what does that look like for the brand?
We started this year to really ramp up with influencers. We're doing it in different ways. We're doing it in a bigger way by collaborating with some of them because they have a point of view. They're saying or doing something that is totally in line with our brand and where we're going. So we have collaborations coming up. Of course, the collaboration take a year, so it will be a 2025 drop. So that's something that we're very excited about for next year. Then we have influencers that are really in strong relationship with the brand. Could go from celebrities who've been wearing, Hanky Panky for years, Dua Lipa, Jennifer Aniston. They've been amazing for us. So we try to maintain these relationships. And then we have, all these content creators that we're leveraging not just to show our products, but really to tell the story behind it. Like, how do they feel? We work with influencers who just got, their first baby and are going through, post-pregnancy and don't feel like their self or don't feel feminine anymore. Just like, how can we make sure that we uplift all these women during their lifetime moment? So we're not just focusing on Gen Z, we're focusing on all the versions of women and trying to build a community of content creators around us who believe in, what we're saying also. But it takes time. And I said, crawl, walk, run. I think we're at the end of the crawling phase. We're getting into the walking one now.
Yeah. I think one thing you said, which you briefly touched on, which I think is actually the most important piece of influencer, is building the relationships. Because you can reach out, you can send them care package, they get it, they like it, whatever. I think it's that journey after that really makes them feel a part of the brand and want to continue talking about it and being an advocate. So I'm curious if you can kind of maybe double down on that a little bit. What does it really take to build these relationships, right? I mean, it sounds like you have relationships with celebrities, and I'm sure they're probably the hardest ones to really maintain the relationship. But any tips for those listening?
I would say, there's a fun fact on what you said. My team was last year looking at all these brands, in beauty or DTC driven brands. Like, we're not just in DTC, we're in wholesale, we have our stores, etc. Seeding products in volume and driving a lot of views. And they were just like, why don't we do that? I said, because we cannot do everything. And this has been amazing for these brands. But I would say a year later, some of these brands are not here anymore to talk about it, right? So it was successful, it was visible. I think my team, loved seeing it and were pushing me. Maybe they were right, and maybe we'll do it at some point. But we wanted to focus on the relationship building. And if you want to tell a story, if you want to be true, if you want to be relevant and not just push products for performance sake, you have to do that. So again, it's a balance between brand and performance. I'm not saying no. I think, you create your TikTok shop, you have to seed products and create content, at scale. Right now, the brand marketing team is so lean in my organization that building relationship takes time. And that's what we do. We custom make some products for celebrities because they want something specific. We have an atelier in New York where we do that. That goes beyond just the relationship. It's just they want something. If we can make it, we make it. And we're lucky enough to have most of our production in the US and actually in the tri-state area. And in Jersey.
That's amazing.
Actually, so it's easier for us to do personalization, customization, etc., and really do a one-to-one relationship. But it takes a lot of time.
Right. Makes sense.
I think one thing that's super interesting about your background, you're not from the U.S. You grew up in Paris, I believe. And I know you've traveled a lot and been in, you said 5 different countries. I'm very curious because you've spent a lot of time in marketing. Touch on a little bit of like just the cultural differences and maybe even just like one-to-one. How is somewhere like France or Paris, how is that territory marketing to their customers versus like how we're talking to ours?
So, and it was 10 years ago, so don't take me wrong.
Yeah.
I went back for the Olympics as well. If you saw the Olympic ceremony, you can see how much, the connection, the emotional aspect of things. And that's an easy example because, most of us watched it, and being bold. And trying new things and standing for ideas. That's part of the French culture. We had the revolution. That's something that brings the creative aspect. And I was lucky to work in amazing agencies. These creative folks are just amazing, but they also have this culture for them where they can push the boundaries. It's not just about performance, because they know if they have this commercial. I will take one other brand in the US that did a great job in that sense. Take Elf Beauty. That was bold, They really invested in brand marketing. They did some bold campaigns, and it paid off. Like their profitability went through the roof. But that's the culture there. Is it driven by performance and data? Less.
Right.
But it works. It works in their own way. You get. But I would give the cons of what's going on there. I think the range of possibilities are not the same.
Right.
In the French culture, when you propose a new idea, that is totally the opposite of what I said. But to get to a point where you can bring it to life, you will get a lot of no's, or you want people to get something perfect out of the gate. So my cultural, mix, living in different countries, goes back to the testing of new ideas, and test in a small way, scale, et cetera, and reiterate. That is something that is very hard to develop in Europe. In the US, that's exactly where I came. I'm just like, okay, I feel like, and I'm becoming a citizen in a month from now.
Amazing.
So I love working here. I love the optimism. I love the boldness. I love the fact that we can try things at a small scale, talk about the results, and then be able to scale. And it goes fast, very fast. If I were to go back to France, I think people will hate me. I'm too fast now in my thinking, I think.
It's very true. I'm also curious, I think one thing that I always hear, especially in the D2C landscape, is like being in like apparel or, obviously subsector of lingerie and whatnot is one of the hardest categories to market to sometimes, because you have so many styles, preferences, sizing, variants, SKUs, combinations. There's so much involved, right? Versus like, not that it supplements is that much easier, but you're trying to sell a product with certain benefits and features for a certain person, right? There is a lot more one-to-one happening versus like this can be 1 to 200 factors, right? I'm curious, like when you guys are talking about, I'm very curious on like your marketing meetings and whatnot. When you're talking about the actual ads or the ones you're creating or the content you're curating and whatnot, I'm sure you base off of your best sellers and whatnot, but what does that look like? How do you get started when you have 200 styles of something, right? And like, how do you not get so, I guess almost analysis paralysis of like, we have to sell this, but we also have to sell this, and there's 200 of these and 100 of these, and how does that typically work?
That's the very hard part. And I've been in what we can call fast fashion, and right now it's really much slow fashion. So we're not dropping new things every other week. We're not these kind of brands.
Yeah,
So it's easier, I would say, because we're really focused on either solving a problem or bringing something, to trends that we're seeing or things that our customers said. But still, if you ask my team, they will just, listen to this podcast and say, Sabrina, you know how many SKUs we have? Yeah, we do have a lot. So it's a question of priorities. So it starts when we make the investments in products with us.
Got it.
So
marketing and product
and
customers are all working
DTC,
together.
chime in, and really not just on the investments, but how we position the product to what we're seeing from a customer perspective.
Smart.
So when the product hits, we already know how we want to position it, and we know who's the customer we want to sell it to. We don't have the campaign yet, but we're already working on it. So
awesome.
Talking about breaking silos is working with design and merch instead of having a lot of big corporations and billion-dollar companies are driven by merchants.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's good or bad, but when you combine both, the magic happens. We launched several innovations lately, and we're so glad with our leadership team that we built that because all of them from the start are performing above our forecasts. Because we knew it's based on what we knew. Yep. It's based on trends that we know are coming, combining with trends that we're seeing on social, and it works. So that's one thing too. It's understanding from a performance perspective, making sure that your agency has access to the margin of each product instead of just top line gross sales. So you can drive a better, profitability to it. And we monitor conversion rate on each of the SKUs. That also, of course, that informs performance marketing, but that informs also our next photo shoot. So when we are shooting, so again, it's brand, performance, business all together. When we do our business review, brand marketing and creative are sitting there to understand that. And adjust to the next newsletter, for example. Okay, we'll shift. That one we were wrong, so let's go with that one. And then we're learning. And I would say the last aspect that I'm sure you talk about at length is personalization. Really ramping up, your personalization strategy, understanding what are the key segments you want to go after, and put the relevant product in front of them. Again, we're at the walking phase there. We're not best in class yet, but we were at Lofts, and that's something that I want to bring to Hanky Panky, because not every woman is the same or looking for the same thing. Depending on your life stage or lifestyle, it's important that we understand that.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. What are some really cool campaigns that you've either been a part of or seen? Like I find it always fascinating when people come up with the liquid death campaign where they're giving away an airplane right now, right? Or a jet or Cybertruck. And I'm curious if you've been part of those or seen some of those and do they work, right? Some of these seem like just extravagantly big bets, but I'm curious on where is that performance of brand play kind of work?
So one thing that I would say I wanted to tell you earlier when you said, there's organic, paid, owned, they're also earned. And earn is key. When you're a smaller brand, we're talking about brands that want to get to $100 million. You need to be creative and innovative to get this earned media, because that's what, is driving. I took Elf Beauty as an example. Yes, they invested a lot. They did this bold campaign during halftime. The campaign itself was, I'm sure, performing, but the earned media and the halo of the discussions that they got after that really drove the long-term effect of that one. So being creative and being bold in the way you bring your message is not just for short term. It can be very powerful and propel your brand to another level. I don't know for Albi, but for us, awareness is something that we need to grow or to maintain for some customers, but to grow. So how do you do that when you don't have the budget of the big brands that are backed up by celebrities without any cash issues, you need to be creative to get there. And I think that's the magic of it. And I love seeing how, some brands, will use trends like dupes. I don't know if you saw what Lululemon did.
Yeah.
You know, you can come and bring your dupe and get a Lululemon. And I was just with a partner of us, and he was talking about the Olaplex, beauty brand, and they created an Ola dupe. I missed that one, and that was so smart. So I think being creative, bringing ideas, and specifically building a team that can bring these ideas to life, because it's not on the CMO only to bring these ideas. It's just, I'm sure in my team I have from Gen Z to people who've been in the company for 20 years. How do you create a structure, an environment where people feel like, okay, I can bring something to the table and I can bring a bold idea. That's something that I really want to work on even more today, because it can really bring your brand to the next level, specifically when you have a small budget.
That's awesome. I really like that.
Have there been any activations that didn't go accordingly to plan, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah, I have one in mind. I told you about the one during Valentine's Day. Okay, so huge traffic, amazing sales, like combination of all of our channels. Yeah, everyone was happy. And we're like, okay, let's do another one. And the other one, we just took one aspect of it. We took the activation aspect, but we didn't plug the influencer and the PR aspect of that. So that was, an activation around the Colorverse. We're known for colors. We have 500 colors in our archives. Women love our colors, so we created a word of colors. And we did it in partnership with a museum, and it was inside the museum. It drove a lot of people. They had a blast. We had a lot of, stations. And if you were there, we're just like, that's an amazing activation. Did we get the earned media and the social coverage that we got with the other one? No. Did we get the traffic that we got? No. So it was a fun event, but I wouldn't do it again.
No, that's a great example. I'm very curious on your thoughts, because we tested this on a very tiny scale. But out of home advertising, you touched on like just a very glimpse, but like trucks, billboards, I see even people getting stickers around trash cans in New York and putting things there. Where do you categorize that, right? And like, do you guys invest in that, one? And two, do you worry about attribution, or do you chalk it up to brand and put it towards a budget and say we have to be everywhere?
That's a tricky one. I would love at some point to be able to do it, because I do think it's part of growing your top of the funnel and bringing, your brand awareness to the next level. I wouldn't, in my case, I would go with CTV before doing that, or doing, other things that can, be more engaging than out of home. With the exception of, if you have something to say at a specific time that can really captivate, someone's attention, then yes, you should do it. If you're talking to, going back to Valentine's Day, that's something that I would maybe do at some point. All these men, who don't have any idea, 2 days or 24 hours, if they have a partner of what they could buy, and they go to the flower shop and just come with this basic, bouquet of flowers, right? I have a bouquet of rose thongs that I just launched last year. So it's a one size. So you cannot be wrong, and you bring a nice piece of lingerie to your partner. I would do something specifically during commute, or, when they leave their office in New York or in any other city, the 2 days before Valentine's Day, to say, hey, just go there, or just go online, get your bouquet on time. Like that's more, tactical than just doing a huge out of home, campaign. If you're, brand like Skims, where, they have huge budgets, yes, during the Olympics, they were everywhere. Subway, airports, etc. Yeah, I wish I had this budget.
Yeah, the Kardashian budget, right?
Yeah.
I do too.
I mean, so many great tips you've given, just from your incredible amount of experience. If there's one thing you'd like for the viewers and listeners to kind of take back and implement in their business today, what would that one thing be?
I will combine everything that I said. I think design for relevance, not objectives. So design your products, design your team, design your objectives, business objectives, design your marketing campaigns to be relevant first, and then look at your objectives. I think that makes a big difference. I think a lot of heritage brand or big, established brands just forget about that. If you're relevant to what's going on to your customers, if you drive, and specifically today where, if you're desirable, if you're connecting with them, they're able to switch from one brand to another. I even saw that Gen Z, the only segment that didn't decrease their spending in apparel this year versus all the others. Why? Because you have to connect and be desirable and be there for them. So be relevant. And then, of course, drive your business and be profitable, but be relevant first.
True on that. Wow.
If you want more from us, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok, and check out the website chewonthis.io.